Hi, and welcome to this free video put together in collaboration with On1. Now, for those that don't know me, my name is Colby Brown, and I'm a landscape travel and humanitarian photographer based out of the East Coast of the US. Now, over the last 11 years, I've worked for some of the biggest names in the photography, tech, and travel spaces, including working with National Geographic as a photo instructor in South America. But I've also started a few of my own companies, including my work with The Giving Lens. The Giving Lens is an organization that blends the idea of photo education with support for sustainable development initiatives in developing countries around the world. We partner with local NGOs and take teams of photographers to various different places to help combat a variety of different causes, such as youth education, women's rights, and clean drinking water projects. To learn more about The Giving Lens, visit thegivinglens.com. Now that that's out of the way, I want to talk a little bit about this package I put together for you guys. Now, first and foremost, it includes a raw file for you guys to follow along with this video tutorial. Now, I know I don't need to say it, but please don't try to take this image and pass it along as your own out there on the interwebs. Instead, use it as practice material to learn more about the tips and techniques that we're going to talk about or that you learn elsewhere. Second, this package includes a preset for you guys to use. Now, like most presets, it's going to take you pretty far, but not all the way. Every image is unique and will need a little bit of its own unique touch, so just remember that. Lastly, if you guys have any questions about this, my photography workshops, or anything with The Giving Lens, please feel free to reach out to me through colbybrownphotography.com. I'm always happy to help. Now, with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Now that we're inside On1 Photo Raw, we're ready to begin. Now, this photo was taken in the Lofoten Islands of Norway during winter a few years ago. And if we navigate to the top right-hand corner here under the info panel, you can see that it was taken with a Sony A7 Mark II, photographed at ISO 100 with 1/100th of a shutter speed at an aperture of f8. Now, the light was beautiful this morning, but I think a lot of the great color is hidden in the latent image data with this raw file. So we're going to have to go ahead and pull some of that out in order to make this image truly something special. Now, to start things off, let's go ahead and adjust the shadow slider in order to pull up some of the detail found in the shadow or the darker parts of our frame. Next, I want to pull down the highlight slider in order to balance some of the bright lights hitting some of these snow tip peaks. This is a nice subtle change, just balancing out the light a little bit better. Now next, I want to adjust the temperature. I want to increase the temperature to make this image a little bit warmer. In doing so, we'll pull out some of that color typically found in sunrises such as the scene here. Navigate to our temperature slider and simply slide it a little bit to the right. Now, the last thing I want to do here in the Develop module is increase the saturation slider to start the process of adjusting our color. Now, we're going to dive more into this in the Effects panel, but for right now, let's pull the saturation slider up just a little bit to get us started. Now we have a really good starting point to jump into the Effects panel and begin stylizing our images. Now here, the first thing that I want to do is adjust the contrast of the image to help everything stand out and pop a little bit more. To do this, let's go ahead and click on the Add Filter button. From there, let's go to Tone Enhancer. Now here we want to navigate to the More button and then slide down to Dark Contrast. As you can see, that really helps things pop out just a bit more. Now, even though we did subtle changes in the Develop module in the reverse direction, I think overall this creates a really nice balanced look for this shot. Now, the one thing that I did notice is that it darkened our shadow pixels a little bit more than I'm happy with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the compression slider, essentially changing the distance between our black and white points. This will help balance our highlights and our shadows a little bit more. Now, the next thing that I want to do is begin to enhance the color for our sunrise. To do so, we need to come up here and select Add Filter. From there, we're going to go to Color Enhancer. And once we're inside this panel, we'll click on More and find the Red Enhancer. In this particular shot, I find that the Red Enhancer does a great job at pulling out a lot of those sunrise colors. Now at this stage, you can further adjust some of the saturation and vibrance sliders for some of the purple or magenta hues to give the image a little bit more balance. To do this, go down to the color range here at the bottom of the panel and select the purple or magenta sliders. From there, you can further refine the saturation. Now those two simple adjustments really helped bring out the color in this image. Now the last thing that I want to do with this image is essentially adjust for our sharpening. Now sharpening is something that is typically overdone with a lot of photographers, so I highly recommend that you be a little bit cautious when it comes to applying sharpening to your images. That's why I do it last. If I ever need to revisit an image, it's always easy to pull back sharpening. Either way, let's go ahead and get started. Now in order to do this, let's jump up and hit the Add Filter button again, and we're going to select Sharpening. Now there are a variety of different ways that you can apply sharpening to your images, but for this case we're going to leave it on High Pass as the type that we're going to select. Now right off the bat, you should notice that this image looks way too over-sharpened. But the problem is not necessarily just that we're applying too much sharpening, it's that we're applying sharpening in the wrong places. Typically, sharpening really just needs to live around your midtones. If you apply sharpening to your shadow parts of your image, then you essentially add noise. And if you apply it to the highlighted or the brightest parts of your image, typically you're adding artifacts. Now in this image, a lot of our midtones are found around our mountain, but there are also some bright tones in there as well. So an easy painted in mask wouldn't really do justice for the type of sharpening that I want to go after. So what we have to do is apply a mask to this sharpening filter. But it isn't going to be an ordinary mask. Instead, we're going to use a luminosity mask, which essentially is a mask based on the specific luminosity or the brightness of pixels. Now, in order to do this, we simply move up here to the mask button next to our sharpening filter, click on it to add a mask to this shot, and then right-click on our mask itself. Here, we move down to Create Luminosity Mask and select it. Now in order to see how this mask is applying the effect, we can go ahead and right-click on the mask again and click Show Mask. All of the white or brighter parts of this image are where you're typically going to see most of this effect being applied, where the darker parts are going to have zero effect applied. So at first glance, this actually looks really good. A lot of our mountain is where we want a lot of our sharpness happening. We don't want much in the sky because it would add artifacts, and we really don't want much in the shadow to the darker parts, especially the bottom and left-hand side of our frame. So this looks great. In order to go back to look at our original image, we right-click back here on our mask and click Show Mask one more time. Now, as I mentioned before, I find that a lot of photographers apply way too much sharpening to their images. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to pull down the opacity or the strength of this specific filter, in this case sharpening, to a more manageable level. Ideally, what we're looking for is to make sure we're not adding artifacts into our frame, which would take away from a lot of the natural image detail. Now, in order to see how sharpening is being applied to our image, let's zoom in 100%. To do this, you can go up to the Nav section in the top right-hand part of your screen and select 100%, and then drag to the area you want to look at. In this case, we want to focus on the mountains because that's where the most detail is going to be found. Now, in order to see how sharpening is being applied, you can click on the blue preview box next to the filter to see if it's being turned on and turned off, to see how the effect looks. Now, ideally, that's exactly what you want, and I don't know if you guys can see that on the recorded video, but essentially we want to enhance the sharpness of this image just a touch, but you don't want to add too much. If you feel the need to further refine your sharpening, you can certainly adjust the opacity at this stage while you're zoomed in looking at all the details. For me, right around 57 looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and zoom back out and look at our shot. Now the last thing that I want to do is make a local adjustment to pull down the highlights found in the peaks here in the top right hand part of our range, as I feel they're a little bit too bright when compared to the rest of the photograph. Now to do this, let's go ahead and click on Local Adjustments. Let's go ahead and make sure everything is zeroed out. And then we can go ahead and select the highlights and pull them down just slightly. Now we can simply paint in where we want the effect applied, in this case, the top of these peaks. If we need to further adjust things, we can adjust them now that the mask has been painted on. Now that's a fairly subtle adjustment, but I feel that it does a really good job at balancing things out. Now overall, I'm very happy with how this image turned out, with only a handful of adjustments in the Develop, Effects, and our Local Adjustments panels. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the original image and compare it to what we've done. You can do this by clicking on the blue preview button found at the bottom of your screen. That's our original image, and this is where we took it. Now I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I hope that you followed along with the raw file that I provided. Remember that the preset that is also included can get you most of the way with this specific image, but you'll need to further adjust and refine things if you're trying to apply it to your own winter sunrise shots out there. Thanks again for watching, and please do let me know if you have any questions. Thanks again.